everybody, welcome to this RTS Q&A for BBC Two's Life After Life. I'm Rihanna Dillon, I'm a film and TV critic, and I am delighted to be chairing this panel. I'm going to be talking to some of the wonderful cast and crew from Life After Life, but first, let's have a look at what we can expect from the series.
What if we could come back and live it all over again and again and again?
They're the two best words in the English language when you put them together. What if?
From the novel by Kate Atkinson, Life After Life starts Tuesday, 19th of April on BBC Two and iPlayer.
So hello to our wonderful panel. Hi. We have Thomasin McKenzie, who plays Ursula Todd. We have James McArdle, who plays Hugh Todd. We have Sian Clifford, who plays Sylvie Todd, and Tessa Ross, exec producer, John Crowley, director and exec producer, and Bash Doran, who is screenwriter and exec producer. Welcome, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So delighted to be speaking about one of my favourite books of all time, one of my favourite stories. Bash, for those who read and loved Kate Atkinson's book, you know, this feels like it could have almost been unadaptable, which I know some people said to you. So why did you believe that wasn't true?
I believed it wasn't true because executive producer Tessa Ross said that it wasn't true. And I decided to go with her on that theory. It was certainly, you know, it was a challenge to adapt and stay true to the novel. You know, there are things about the novel that you could 100% adapt and then change and make into something more conventional. I didn't want to do that. Tessa didn't want me to do that, but it definitely meant that it was a more risky adaptation because it asks a lot of its audience.
Mm-hmm. So what are some of the sort of new scenes and settings that you had to put in to make this work as a TV show?
I didn't put in very many new scenes and settings. A lot of it was about curation. I mean, Kate provides an enormous amount of material in the original novel. So if you were to do the whole thing, you would have the pleasure of watching 50 or 60 hours of the novel, and we weren't given that many. So a lot of it was really about reimagining it in a more condensed form, but without limiting any of its scope. There were a few spaces that I built out more, and of course it wasn't as simple as cutting and pasting scenes, but I really tried to stay as true to the novel as people who adapted Forster did to the Merchant Ivory movies. I mean, that was sort of my goal, that it's a beloved novel for a reason, and the key was to preserve the novel's voice.
So as Bash says, Tessa, it is a beloved novel. Is there a reason that it's taken nearly a decade for it to come to our screen since it was first published?
Yeah, because Bash and John weren't available to do it. I think it had been under option actually, and somebody had a go at developing it as a movie. And I think what happens is when you have to have enough material, as you know from having watched it, to get a sense of the expanse of life, the different lives, the possibility of life, and the acceptance of life, all those various stages that Ursula goes through and the family go through. So in a way, it was about the space of television, and television being brave enough to have a go. And also I spent, you know, quite a number of years persuading Kate to let me have a go, and finding Bash and finding John was actually incredibly important. So it's always about the right people at the right time with the right support, isn't it?
Absolutely. So what was it about Ursula's story that resonated with you, and why were you sort of so keen to get this made?
Well, it's the whole of it really. It's the hopefulness amongst the pain of life that I think is so wonderful. And it's so rare to find, you know, when television is at its best, it's often because it's novelistic. It's because you want to keep turning the page. It's because you want to watch the next episode. It's because you long for it. And I can remember my favorite moments of watching television as a young child were always about wanting next week. And I know we don't have those next week moments in quite the same way now, but this was offering that opportunity for the yearning of story, for the yearning of the characters that you fell in love with, but also that sense that it's about all of life. And I think when things capture the whole of life, They're very rare, really. So I didn't know that it was possible, but I knew it was worth trying.
I'm so glad this was TV and not a film. It would have been awful if it had been condensed anymore. Thomasin, as a New Zealander, what was it about Life After Life and the character, particularly of Ursula, that sort of resonated with you and attracted you to be a part of the series?
I think when I first read the script, it was Shan and I were talking about this yesterday. We did a couple interviews together, which was very fun. But it was just kind of a gut instinct. Like I read the script and I just knew straight away that it was something that I was desperate to be a part of, and that I'd be very lucky to be a part of. I think the thing that drew me into Ursula was the kind of, I'm someone that very much lives in the past, and I'm someone who holds on to a lot of like guilt or regret, or I'm constantly cringing at myself. And so that chance, the possibility of trying again and again and again, and then finally realizing that you kind of just have to let it go, and you have to be in the present moment and be like Tessa said, just like come to a place of acceptance. So that was kind of one of the main things that drew me in. And then I just got drawn more and more and more in by the people that were a part of it.
A lot of the audiences that watch it will know you from Jojo Rabbit, which is also obviously set around World War II. So what is it about that era, do you think, that fascinates people so much?
I think because we're living in a very scary and uncertain time at the moment, and I think people need to be reminded of that era, especially right now with what's going on in the world. I think it's just kind of a reminder and to remember, the events in the past that led up to such terrible moments, and those kind of events that seem to be reoccurring now.
John, initially this seems to be sort of quite a domestic, localized drama, but then of course we go to Germany, to war-torn London, to the seaside. What did you love about getting to explore this era in different settings?
I thought that there was a sort of visual language suggested in the middle of it that was quite exciting, that while there were familiar settings of an Edwardian household and a child growing up through First World War and then on through the Blitz, this sort of basic conceit at the center of it, of the repetition of lives with subtle distinctions and the chance of a sort of cumulative emotional story arcing throughout the 4 episodes, felt really fresh to me, and it felt like you could sort of subvert what was a period story in a way that was interesting.
And I feel like it could have so easily gone even further into magical realism. So why did you want to be sparing with that? Because obviously this doesn't feel like sci-fi territory, for example, which it could easily have gone into.
No, because I think it's an emotional story at its core, really. And the thing that was very important for me was that each of her lives would feel like it was present tense, rather than a sort of beautiful, elegant period story in itself, that you would feel with her. And then the loops, or the bits where she exits this life and comes back in, they were our moments, our little portals to play with something a little bit more theatrical.
Oh, it looked gorgeous. James and Sian, you have been friends for years, right? And you have such a no, never met her.
We were until we shot Life After Life.
You have such a lovely relationship as Sylvie and Hugh. Do you think that your friendship and, the bond that you've had over those past 10, 11 years was necessary to portray kind of this really realistic and loving marriage? Sian?
No, I think it depends. I've had the privilege of working with friends on many occasions, and it's always amazing. You get so much for free. John didn't know that James and I knew each other. That was just a beautiful twist of fate, but it was a total joy for both of us, I think. And just we had to jump in at the deep end with this kind of project, but we were able to do that together, and with, you know, we already trusted each other completely, and I think it allowed us both to be, or certainly me, to be braver, and yeah, so I loved it. It was a real treat.
We did keep saying, you know, can you imagine this was with a stranger, or sometimes when you start a job, especially filming, we were lucky to have a much longer rehearsal process than you would ever usually get on telly, but even that is short relatively, and we kept saying, can you imagine what it would be like if it was just, you know, it's about 2 weeks into a film, if you're working with someone who's meant to be your partner or something, that you start to like relax and trust, but we already had so much for free, you know.
And I think it's quite rare as well that we see a father-daughter relationship as close and as simple as Hugh and Ursula's. We're reminded throughout that she's his favourite child. Why do you think that is?
Because she looks like him. No. I think no. There's just, you know, they mention that a couple of times. You know, parents having favourite children, and it's not. You know, people like to pretend it's not there, but I probably think it is there, and. And I think there's well, he can't help but feel protective of her, but there's also something he just admires about her as well, you know. Like, I always think that those last scenes, the tearing him is obviously he does not want to lose his little girl and to send her off to a war, but he can't believe that that's how brave his daughter is, you know. I think there's that constant conflict, and he notices that in her all the time. Sylvie's calling her, you know, weird, or something's wrong with her, or whatever, you know, that he's anxious. I don't think he sees it at that. He sees it as, you know, intelligence or courage.
Yeah. Sian, I think that Sylvie is so beautifully realised as an equally repressed and loving, quite passionate mother. She's pretty outspoken and strong-willed. But how do you think society has shaped her into the kind of woman that we see?
I think totally, to be honest. She's a real, I was going to say victim of her time, but she's not a victim. I think she also has an internal conflict with being very comfortable in the situation she's in, but also pushing against it. And you see that in her relationship with Izzy, who I think are very similar characters, actually, in very wildly different circumstances. And you know, that Izzy is envious of that family setup, and Sylvia is envious of her freedom. And that's something John and I discussed very early on, and felt very present in the script, and certainly was something we wanted to focus on. So I think, yeah, she's a woman of her time, and I think she doesn't understand her daughter. She desperately wants to, and you know, thank God she's got someone like Izzy, actually, Ursula, I mean, to sort of provide that kind of support for the progression that Ursula is pushing for, and is there in Izzy too, although she doesn't feel like she can take that step. Yeah, I don't know if that answers your question or not, but yeah, I think definitely of her time. Yeah.
I think there is something about the family unit which is just so appealing after people are only just seeing their families regularly again. And so that was a real kind of pleasure to see everyone communicating all of these children, just like a busy household. How close did you all become because of the sort of intimacy and number of those big family scenes? Thomasin?
I just been like smiling goodly all throughout it, because it's such a treat to see everyone here on the same screen. I wish it was in person, but I think we definitely all became very close. I really admire Sian and James for being able to I think there were about 20 children. There were many different iterations of the same character, like 4 Ursulas, you know, multiple. And so they had to wrangle like what felt like hundreds of children, and they did it very well. So I really admire that. I think they were the kind of the captains of the family ship.
Bash, I was thinking about, why this story feels so individual, because we've had time travel stories, we've had people being reincarnated again and again. What do you think makes Ursula's story so different and unique?
Well, going back to your question about did I think it was adaptable, the two things that really gave me confidence were one was it was about a family, as you said, which is something TV in particular does really, really well. And the other thing is that we do know this trope, right? You get to come back and you try again, but usually that trope, not always, but usually that trope is used in movies, and it has a very specific bent, which is if you just get to try again and again and again and again, ultimately you will become whatever bland definition the world holds for a good person. You'll get to rectify all of your mistakes. And what's so fascinating about the novel is that it's really a much deeper philosophical exploration of the extent to which we can and can't not change ourselves, and the extent to which we can and can't affect the larger historical moment. And Ursula is this incredibly complex, wise figure after she's lived through 4 or 5 lives, who is wrestling with the enormous desire we have to evolve, with the limits that inevitably every life places around us. So she really was this privileged window into some very, very big questions that I think everybody is wrestling with inchoately. The older that they get. I mean, we've all had the experience, except for the many children on this shoot, of aging. And when you age, you start to kind of get a sense of multiple selves that are always with you: the 10-year-old you, the 15-year-old you, the 20-year-old you before the thing happened. And Ursula is having to deal with that in a very real way. So she's interesting.
When you're writing about all of those sort of philosophical ideas, did you sort of end up aligning yourself with any of them?
Oh, well, I ended up back where I always am, which is, do your best and try to be loving and surround yourself with people you love. And the chances are there'll be some horror along the way.
Right. So kind of Hugh, that feels very much like a sort of Hugh sentiment.
Yeah, me and Hugh, having lived through the First World War, we just get it and try to express it.
Tessa, as we were kind of alluding to, it feels intrinsically British, because of course it is, but what do you think the series will appeal to global audiences? What about it will appeal?
That's such a brilliant question. I don't have a clue, because you can't second guess an audience. You can only sort of react with your gut, can't you, and believe, do what you believe. But I cannot imagine that a story about love and getting through life won't touch everybody. And actually there is so much now, as Thomasin says, the world is in such a state, and actually so much of what's on screen in this story, which is in some ways hopeful, in some ways not, in some ways very frightening, is so resonant. And I think, how could it not touch people out? It's not just about the UK, it's about all of us.
John, the level of detail that you incorporate is absolutely astonishing. Is it true that there was a cake that the cast eat, and that it was, obviously it's filmed, set during the World War II era, that it was actually made from rations? Is that true?
Well, that's what our catering experts told me. I mean, I can't prove it, but I like to think it was. But there was also a Colin the Caterpillar cake knocking around set that day. So I don't know. But look, no, I mean, the thing is, Susie Days, who's our amazing production designer, has an eye for detail, and that trickled all the way down on everything that was tangible on that set. And she was then very generous about my approach to it, which was, we'll then throw all of that away, which is, I don't particularly want to fetishize it. I want to get it all right, but really I want to make it about those actors' faces and about the emotions in the room, so that the period quality of it would be worn lightly, but would feel authentic, but in the background.
But can I just say, I'd also heard this rumor about the rations, and I was like, oh, it's impressive, and blah, blah, blah. And then, like, as Thomas has said, there's like a jillion children, right? And you're endlessly fighting like light and children. And so I was like trying to be really professional and just get the shot done for Hugh's birthday. And like action, the scene's going ahead, and then someone brings me a Colin the Caterpillar to and I didn't laugh, I didn't corpse, and I was like, what is going on here? And it was John. It was John.
It was the ultimate test of your integrity as an actor. You didn't actually flinch, but anyway, it was a serious set, Rihanna. I can promise you that.
Oh, I'm sure.
There was no messing of that sort. That was a one-off at the very end of the shoot.
Well, no, because reveal how dumb I am. When I saw the cake, I thought, is that how long Colin the Caterpillar's been going?
You trusted our research, which was very touching.
Love that. Thomasin, you had your hand up. Do you want to jump in or something?
Oh, I wanted to say that just like the talent of the everyone, the team who kind of provided all the food and everything. There was a scene where Ursula's kind of like hammering a piece of meat, and that meat was fake, and I just thought that was pretty cool. It was like made out of dough or something, because I was vegan at the time, so I didn't, as a vegan, I didn't want to be hammering raw meat. Yes. So I was just very touched that they made a fake slab of meat for me.
John, I know that you know this was kind of filmed during lockdown, COVID, all of that kind of, what kind of pressures did the schedule put on something like this, which already seems incredibly complex?
Gosh, we did pretty well. We didn't have to shut down through shooting, but it's a little bit more cumbersome. Masks are difficult to communicate with. I find it very hard to give notes with a mask on, and you'd go up to an actor with a mask on and you'd see terror on their face because you look like an oncologist approaching them or something. It's sort of, it doesn't, so it's hard to be relaxing on set when everybody's masked out, and social distancing doesn't work well with film sets. So it made it all a little cumbersome, but we had a great COVID team who really helped us rather than just sort of acted like the COVID police, as it were. And we found our rhythm pretty quickly with it. And it was already a pretty tight schedule, and then just became slightly tighter. But we got it done. We didn't drop anything.
That made me laugh, because with all the birthing scenes, it must have been quite intimidating to have people approaching you, Sian, in masks every 5 minutes while you've got your...
Well, I will say that John's eyes are deeper than the ocean, so never threatening when he approaches. I generally would have to fight off tears looking into his eyes as he knows, but
I was just going to say his eyes are so blue. They're so sharp that you feel like he's piercing right into your soul. So like you're not being able to see the bottom half of his face. All you see are those piercing blue eyes. It's like, whoa.
There you go. That was the effect of COVID on shooting.
And then he would leave. Blue eyes. Then he would leave, and you think, what did he say? Faster, older.
You were never listening to a word I said, were you? Anyway.
James, seeing yourself, because we see Hugh gets older and older, obviously, in some of the timelines. So seeing yourself as an old man must have been slightly terrifying. Just like being confronted with your future.
I look better as the old man than I do as the young one. I'm hoping that's how it turns out for me. To be honest with you, also you were saying about COVID, nothing was as difficult. Forget COVID. Where Thomasin and Sian and I were staying, we were sharing the apartment blocks with the Married at First Sight UK cast.
You're kidding.
I'm not kidding. I'm here to say it was hell. It was.
There's your headline.
And I used to wake up ready to play Hugh, and I'd hear this like person say, "So did you come here to find love, and did you find it?" And then I'm like, "Shut up!" I'm down the stairs. Anyway, that was much worse than COVID, I found. It was, well, never mind.
Well, remember once we woke up at like our pickup was at like 5-6 a.m. in the morning. We all individually walked down to the lobby, and there was just a woman completely passed out on the lobby floor, still with like a glass of champagne in her hand.
Yeah. Who knew where she was from, but they knew how to party in that building block. So then the COVID was a breeze.
Sian, presumably it's not really that often that you get to portray sort of like the whole spectrum of a human life. So what did that mean for you in terms of, like, you know, physically having to adjust, but also, I guess, mentally, like I was just saying, having to sort of confront the idea of aging?
It was an amazing challenge, to be honest. And I said, I was saying this yesterday with Thomasin, but I love any part that will make me more elastic as an actor, but also as a human being. And that's what getting to play these characters from, 1910. And I think James and I went up to 1947, was just the most extraordinary privilege, to be honest. And I, like Thomasin, when I first read the script, I was just like, I have to be involved in this. And so it was an amazing challenge. It's kind of extraordinary watching it back, because we obviously didn't shoot it chronologically, and we would have to jump between those like ages in a day sometimes. It was amazing. I'm quite a philosophical person anyway, so just chuck some more wood on the pyre of that.
It was really scary to begin with. Well, I found it, but John gave me confidence in it, because I was freaking out about that a little bit. But once we got into the rhythm of it, it just it stopped being a sort of like performative thing, and I don't know. I felt like I could slide into it easier because of where we were at in the story. You know, like you felt sort of
family unit,
you know, when you saw. By the time it became Patsy Ferran and Harry Michelle and Laurie Kinniston, you're just so exhausted. Like you know, it sort of did a lot of the work for you. But what I mean is, it just didn't. I don't know. Sometimes I wasn't conscious as having to do old acting. Do you get like that? It felt just natural, because it was where we were at in the story.
And it's in the writing. It's in Bash's extraordinary script. I mean, it does it all for you. The rhythm of the character changes as you grow older, and and also the children were growing up, and that family unit felt so unified and so real and tangible. Because the first 6 weeks we were at Fox Corner, so we did absolutely everything that we filmed there, and so really, we really got into a rhythm together. But I mean, a terrifying task, but we had an incredible support network around us to get us there.
Thomasin, we kind of meet Ursula and you like as a 16-year-old, and then we see you kind of grow up on screen, not quite age in the same way necessarily, but obviously you become a young woman, an older woman, you have then responsibilities. I'm trying to be really careful about not giving too much away about where the story goes. But which was the kind of setting that you felt most comfortable in Ursula's sort of timeline?
I think, am I allowed to, because it is a book, so I'm allowed to kind of be specific. At one point, or a couple points, Ursula becomes a mum, and I really, 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 really loved that. There was in one of the scenes, my favourite scenes between Sian and I, Sylvie and Ursula, it's kind of, and again, I'm trying not to give too much away, it's set around a baby, and Ursula's had a baby, and there's kind of like a moment between Sylvie and Ursula that is a reconnection of the two of them, and it's very satisfying having that moment after all of the, you know, the tension between them in the past. It's really moving to see that, and the young girls that played Ursula's children, and being able to communicate with them, and they were both also so lovely. And I don't know, I really like babies, so I just liked being a mum. And also the beginning of the Germany sequence was really, really heavenly to me. We were filming outside. I think that was maybe the first location we moved to after Fox Corner. And it was, we were outside in the forest, and it was just really, really beautiful. I think it's kind of hard to choose one age of Ursula's. I think my favorite lives are the one where you see Ursula has kind of built on her strength. That's really, really beautiful, especially after so much trauma.
Yes. Bash, there's a point when Hugh comes home from the war, and there's like a real railway children moment, like the oh my daddy. And obviously we know the stories of Augustus were kind of like an homage to Just William. So how influential was kind of like classic children's fiction to the story of Ursula and her family?
Do you mean for me or Kate Atkinson?
Well, for both of you, I guess, because I think I didn't get that sort of railway children bit when I read the book necessarily, but I felt it quite strongly when I watched the show.
I think that the railway children piece might be a bit of a coincidence because I haven't seen it, although I did read the novel.
Interesting.
I just think war, it's a very iconic thing, people waiting for their fathers to come home. But the actual way that it's set up is pretty directly taken from the way Kate set it up, down to the setting, I think. So yeah, I really just used her work as the source, while thinking a lot about the question you raised earlier about whether or not sci-fi should be a feel or not, and ultimately decided that it shouldn't too much. But I didn't do reading beyond the work that she'd done, but I know that she is a very very passionate researcher and historian, so I would imagine she did a lot of hardcore reading.
And Kate is also an exec producer, isn't she? So she was presumably around, but I think she sort of let you kind of take the reins, right?
Yeah. Tessa, do you want to go?
No, I just wanted to say that she was really generous, wasn't she? Lovely about your writing, lovely about the work, and absolutely understood that it was a different thing. Making film, making television, or writing a novel requires such different muscles. So very generous in her response to it all.
Yeah, she was very, very supportive. We had a private little relationship on email, and it felt very good to have her blessing.
It must have been really lovely to know that you wouldn't have had to kind of run everything past somebody.
Yes, that was very positive.
Yes. John, there's kind of the imagery that we see over and over again, which is the sort of snow imagery every time Ursula dies, and the snapshot of her body fading to black. Tell us about kind of constructing the look of that, because obviously we do see it throughout, but it never feels repetitive.
Do you mean how we did it literally, or what? Why
that? Yeah.
Well, I think it goes back to what we touched on earlier on, which is sort of, to go after a sort of very organic naturalism for her lives, then meant that when you were spinning out and coming back around to her being reborn again, it felt like she needed to disappear off into a void of some sort. And the idea of her disappearing off into a sort of black space came sort of largely from a conversation with Susie Davies, our designer, about Dogville, the Lars von Trier film, and whether there was any space for it to go that sort of meta, and we didn't go that route ultimately, but it did feel appropriate to sort of give a viewer a chance to understand what was happening after, because the snow happened. Bash took the snow and put it into each of the deaths in the scenes, and that was one of the first things I loved about the scripts as well, was this slightly surreal thing of it beginning to snow indoors, and it just felt like it would give us a breathing space as well, rhythmically, between each of our lives to travel away, and that was very sort of visually pleasing.
And I love those.
Sorry, just to say that one of the first time we met, I think Kate had read 1 and 2 maybe. She was very relieved that we kept the snow, like we started in her good books, and she told me that somebody previously had not kept the snow, and that had not gone well for them. So.
And as I say, it could easily have been repetitive, and it absolutely wasn't. So how did you avoid using the same sequences too many times or for too long? Presumably there must have been a lot of conversation about that.
Well, actually, it was reasonably simple. We made a decision to never repeat a shot. And that was a principle. I don't know that we've managed to do that, because there's so much material that you do have to wind up repeating. But oftentimes those repetitions are different takes, even if it's so the whole point was that everything would be the same but different. And that flowed through the approach constantly to the way that we would shoot it on set, and without trying to bother any of the actors with it. Stuart, our DP, would make tiny adjustments to things so that your eye feels that what you're looking at isn't a flashback, because that would have been disaster, because her life is always moving forward. So even when you're spinning through bits of her life, you want them to feel like slightly different to the way you've seen them before, so that there's sort of these incremental adjustments in her life. So that's what we set ourselves a task in shooting and in editing it, was to never repeat ourselves.
And Tessa, there's a book in the same universe, A God in Ruins, which looks at the life of lovely Teddy.
Yeah.
Is there space for that in your universe? Would you come back on board for that?
If I could have all of these people to work with again, then the answer is yes. And if, that kind of, the thing is that when things are good, it's often great not to look for them again. It's often great to look for something else and look in a different direction. I haven't not thought about it, and please don't think I've been lazy and not spoken to Bash and said, what would we do, would we? But it's very hard to have such a wonderful experience with amazing cast, amazing director, and such extraordinary writing. And actually, when you feel that everybody's being honest, you'll get the sense from this group, there is nobody playing a game here and going, oh, we really had a good time. They really had a good time. They really, and they felt it. And I'm sorry but I think that thing of us all being so charming and lovely and not really meaning it. And this felt great for all the right reasons, because it was hard work, but it also felt important and beautiful. So to do it again, well, it would have to be better. And I think that's the thing, isn't it? That it's not just about hours of television, it's about doing something special.
I'm going to end on a final question. Tessa, I'll start with you. If you could change one thing in your life, if you got a do-over, what would it be? Do-over. It's actually, I actually think all mistakes make you better eventually, even if they're hard. So I don't know that I would change anything. I think you kind of always accumulate and look at yourself and think, oh, okay, I buggered up that bit, but I made me stronger for this, or able to deal with that. I'd like to be tall. I'd love to have been blonde. I'd like to have doubled my number of children, although I'm very grateful for the ones I've got. There are lots of things, but generally I feel pretty lucky. John,
I'm going to go with the sort of pure idea that's in the script as well, which is if you could do it all again and do it exactly the way it is, that's the best way to do it, I think. And throw regrets over my shoulder.
Yeah.
Bash?
I literally am counting up all my regrets and trying to put them in order. And I think top of the list is being very, very drunk in front of the band Radiohead. I regret it. I wouldn't do it again. It's one of my most painful memories when the bodyguard said to Tom York, "Should I just take her away?" And Tom York said, "Yeah." It's like, you know, but
Gosh, that's an Emmy award-winning scene that you will one day write. So you can't be scrubbing that from your life, you know.
But no, for the most part, I feel like things have worked out pretty well. You know,
Yeah.
we do learn from these horrific moments. I no longer take advantage of the free bar.
Thomasin, what about you?
It's not a do-over, but if I could repeat an experience in my life, it would be filming Life After Life.
Oh,
That's so lovely.
so lovely. Bash is like, oh God, mine was actually. James.
This hotel room.
What? I missed that. What did you say?
This hotel room.
Oh.
Not lovely. I don't know. I don't think I would. I don't think I would.
You'd have booked a different hotel from the Married at First Sight lot.
Yeah. And this one, I'm fussy on hotels. Don't like either. But anyway, I just don't think I would change anything. Or don't know. I agree. I think all mistakes, you have regrets, and it's horrible, and there's moments that you just wish never happened, but they did happen, and I think they're supposed to sometimes, you know.
Sian?
I think I'm in camp acceptance as well. Despite my constant begging of John to do reshoots every single day, I think I wouldn't be who I am right in this moment if all of the things before hadn't happened. But I'm also in the camp where if I got to do anything again, it would be this job. It's just been a dream come true, really.
You guys are too adorable. Thank you so much for joining us to talk about Life After Life. Thank you everyone at home for watching, and Life After Life is coming soon to BBC Two and BBC iPlayer, so make sure that you catch every single second. Take care. Bye.